Hello, guys, and welcome back. It's so good to have you here with me today. And today we're talking about how many platforms should you actually be marketing your jewelry business on? Like, what is the optimal number of platforms? Because we live in a world where there are so many different tools for growing our community, for driving visibility, and a whole lot of them are completely free. So that's really incredible on one level. And on the other hand, it's kind of like overwhelming, like, okay, well, there's so many different platforms from Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. There's a lot of different platforms. You can be Pinterest, all these different things. And it's like, well, you have limited time and energy as a business owner, especially in the early stages of business before you've built your team. Where should you really be spending all your time and energy? Which platforms are the best for driving connection and building community for your business, and which ones are going to ultimately give you the biggest return on investment? So I'm going to start by saying that there is no magic number that is this is the number every single business should be on because this is the optimal number. That's not how it works. What it actually what my recommendation is that you start with 1 to 2 platforms initially, and you really go all in on those, and you get really visible there, you get really connected to your community there, and you kind of nail your content and nail the strategy behind those 2 platforms before embracing a third platform. And then you can go on to the third one. And this is kind of what I do with my clients in the Jewelry Business Academy, essentially, is we're looking at like how many platforms is optimal for you and which are the key platforms that we want you on in your business. And so the first one that I highly recommend is Instagram. I know people like to hate on Instagram and the algorithm, but I have not seen another platform that is as effective at building communities. TikTok is great for going viral, but let me tell you, nothing quite seems to beat the Instagram communities and the relationships that you're able to have with your community when you learn how to show up properly and embrace taking up space and put out content that is not thinking about like, what can this do for me, but what can this do for my community and how can it help them feel seen and how can it help them feel connected? And so Instagram is like hands down one of my favorites. And here's what I see people doing is they'll be like, I'm going to go on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Pinterest because I want to do as well as I can in my jewelry business. And I love the thought process behind that. But that's definitely a quick way to burn out and just start feeling frustrated. And you're going to put out watered down content by doing that. The next platform that I really recommend is email, because your email list is the only thing that you own in your jewelry business. You do not own your followers, unfortunately, on social media. You don't even own your account. You could lose it. We have there's people who lose their accounts all the time. So something to keep in mind, your email list is the only thing you really own, and it's very, very valuable. And so it's important to spend time and energy building that list, nurturing that list, reaching out to that list. And I highly recommend it if you're a jewelry business owner. Now, when it comes to the third platform, there are a couple of options. There is one that I highly recommend that I get a lot of my clients to do. And the reality is, it's the most vulnerable one. It's the scariest. It's the one that makes people feel very uncomfortable. It makes people feel very anxious. It makes people feel like they're not worthy of being on that platform. And it makes them feel very just overwhelmed. And the reality is, yes, it's a scary platform to be on one level, but when you work on your confidence, and it's one of the things I do with my clients from day one in the program, we start by working through the blocks of being seen, of being heard, of taking up space, of using their voice. And we get them from day one to start taking small, tolerable steps in terms of taking up space and being on camera and being heard and using their voice and expressing themselves. And we work through this trajectory of like little steps every single day, and we move up in terms of how vulnerable they are and how scary they are. And in doing so, we start releasing that fear around that. And you're probably like, Robin, are you going to tell us what platform it is? And I can tell you, you're already on it. It is podcasting, and it is a scary thing for people. If you've never recorded a podcast before, it is very vulnerable to go on a podcast and talk and share and um, share your story, because podcasts are really effective if you know how to do them. It's not effective if you're going to come on and try sell your product. That will never get you anywhere. And it's one of the things I teach my clients how to do in the Jewelry Business Academy, is how to utilize these different platforms, especially podcasts, to build community, build the know, like, trust factor, get people excited about your products, your brand, and actually turn them into paying customers, because it's not as easy as just like going and you don't have the product to lean on, essentially, which you do when you're on social media. So that's where I would get started. And then things like Threads. I mean, Threads is a no brainer. It's so easy because you can be linking the content from Threads onto Instagram. And that just makes sense because it's so simple. It doesn't require a lot of work. Um, and yes, you can link some of your accounts like TikTok and Instagram and all that stuff. But ultimately, you're not really going to see results if you're not consistently putting out the right amount of content. And I'll talk about the right amount of content another day, because you're not going to like the answer. I can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to like the answer. And sometimes, as a coach, we have to tell you what's inconvenient to hear. And that's what I have to sometimes tell my clients, what's inconvenient to hear, but very necessary to hear if they want to see growth in their business. So I will leave it at that, but I just want to encourage you to look at, like, okay, how many platforms am I on at the moment? And, how committed am I to each of these platforms? Am I showing up consistently on all of them? Or am I showing up on Instagram once a week and like email once a month and kind of thinking that should be getting me results? So take a look at like the frequency at which you're showing up on these platforms. Then look at how effectively do you think you're showing up, because content versus content marketing are two completely different things. I will save this for another episode for you, but content and content marketing are not the same. And it's something that causes a lot of confusion with business owners, and it causes them to overinvest their time and energy into content that isn't actually going to get them anywhere. It's not going to drive the know, like, trust factor. It's not going to drive connection. It's not going to drive sales. And they think it will because it looks kind of light and bright, and they feel like they're being vulnerable. But there is a difference between content and content marketing. So we'll save that for another episode. But I hope this has been a short and sweet, helpful episode for you. And if you are on some of these platforms and you're struggling to see results, you really need to look at the strategy behind how you're showing up and how consistently you're showing up and how you're implementing everything on those platforms. For example, how you're creating your reels, what music you're using, how you're framing your captions, where our CTAs are, and all of that. And if you're struggling with that and you'd like my help, then I'd love to invite you to join us in the Jewelry Business Academy. You will literally have too much access to me, and you will be asking me questions. You have the ability to ask me questions literally every single day. You'll join me on group calls every single week. We have multiple group calls every week that you can join and ask your questions and get coaching and get support, personalized support, because I get to know every single one of my clients' businesses very intimately, so that I'm able to customize my feedback and my support in a way that's going to best support you and your business and your goals. So if that's something that feels exciting and expansive and you are ready for support, come and join us. You can head to jewelrybusinessacademy.ca to learn more, and I will see you on the other side. So I'm going to leave it at that today, and I'm looking forward to diving into our next episode with you soon.